Okay, so hello everyone. Before we start today, I want to acknowledge with respect the Indigenous peoples and communities whose historical relationships with the land continue to this day and on whose traditional territories our work takes place. My name is Autumn Sipis. I am the project manager of the Canadian Coalition for Green Healthcare. And on behalf of the coalition, I would like to welcome you to today's webinar, Low Carbon Resilience Road Mapping. This webinar is being delivered as part of the Coalition's Preparing Canada's Healthcare Buildings for Net Zero project, made possible with an investment from the Government of Canada's Low Carbon Economy Implementation Readiness Fund. Throughout the event, please use the chat function for any technical issues you may be experiencing, use the Q&A function for any questions you have regarding the presentation, and our panelists will be answering questions at the end of the event today. We will also be recording this presentation, the recording of which will be sent to all registrants and will be available on our website and YouTube channel at a later time. I would now like to introduce our first presenters. Okay, so first up, we have Kori Jones. In his role as Director of Energy and Emissions for Vancouver Coastal Health, Kori Jones supports VCH to navigate the organizational change management required to move towards low carbon and climate resilient development and operations. We also have Janani. I'm sorry, Janani, I should have asked how to pronounce your last name. So Janani is the Energy and Emissions Project Manager for Vancouver Coastal Health and responsible for the strategic planning and implementation of low carbon resilient project initiatives for VCH's building portfolio. All right, take it away, guys.
Thank you, Aubrey. Just confirm everyone can see my screen.
Looks good for me.
Okay, excellent. Okay, well, good morning all. As mentioned, I am Kori Jones, the Director of Energy Emissions here at Vancouver Coastal Health. We also support the Energy and Environmental Sustainability team, which we'll speak about a bit further. I'm presenting with my colleague Janani, who is an Energy and Emission Project Manager on our team. And we'll be talking about embedding low carbon resilience into cooling infrastructure strategies. Let's just get started. I'll go for the first slides fairly quick. And Janani will be posting a list of terms that we'll be using in this presentation, just to make sure we have a reference if anything is unfamiliar that we're speaking about. I'm grateful to be presenting on the unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples, including the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. Across VCH, we recognize that places of work in our VCH facilities lie on the traditional homelands of 14 First Nation communities and 3 Métis chartered communities as well. All of which I would say we have a lot to learn from in many areas, but especially in thinking about the topic of today on Indigenous knowledge on climate adaptation and environmental stewardship. And I would encourage you to learn about groups in your region, in your area. We all have a lot to learn. Vancouver Coastal Health, we're one of 5 health authorities in BC, and we deliver services to about a quarter of the population here in BC, roughly 1.25 million people. There are many geographic, local, and government and cultural considerations as we deliver care and develop across BC. We currently have 192 buildings in our portfolio, representing 770,000 square meters or 8.3 million square feet of conditioned floor area to manage. Our Energy and Environmental Sustainability team, we call ourselves EES for short, so I'll be saying EES quite a bit through the presentation. But we work to advance climate resilience and environmental sustainability in healthcare. We are a regional collaboration team housed within the facility management departments across 4 organizations, including Vancouver Coastal Health. And our team contributes to 6 focus areas: climate change, water, energy and carbon, materials, food, and transportation, and aims to support leadership and innovation to make a meaningful impact. There's a link on the bottom if anyone wants to learn more about our team. Today, we'll discuss our organizational context, the drivers for some of this work. I think that's important to us to kind of build that foundation of the support for enabling us to do this, provide a high-level overview of our planning framework, and walk through our key stages in the planning process. Starting at a high level here in Canada, this applies to us all, but there is strategic alignment for this work in climate action and sustainability. Federally, Canada has developed an emission reduction strategy and national adaptation strategy to support future investments in climate resilience and low carbon health systems and facilities. At the provincial level, there's quite a bit of policies in play. We have the Climate Change Accountability Act with legislated emission reduction targets and climate change reporting requirements. We have a Clean BC roadmap, which is really an economic and environmental provincial strategy that has direction for public sector organizations, for leadership and some stretch targets. We have, and we've worked together with our Ministry of Health on developing capital policy, which embeds emission reduction, climate resilience strategies, and environmental considerations into construction and major capital projects. And we actually have a mandate that comes right from ministry to our board that requires us as an organization to consider and embed and just be aware that how we operate, how we develop, how we build, how is that improving and helping us prepare for our future in climate change. Future climate change impacts. At the organization level, we have a policy, environmental sustainability policy, actually being updated right now to a climate ready and environmental sustainability policy, which will then filter through the organization. And we have a planetary health pillar, one of 4 foundational pillars, which we are navigating and operating our organization. And there's a lot that we're still trying to address and understand here, but it's exciting to be a part of that progressive work. I'll speak a little bit more about the planetary health piece now. Really, the planetary health approach acknowledges the interdependent relationship between the health of our communities and the health of the environment. Our work is coordinated by a transformation office between our team, EES and facilities, population health, and a sustainable clinician team. The goals of this pillar are to reduce emissions, to achieve zero unnecessary waste, create a climate resilient health system, and to support our communities to adapt and reduce their impacts. If you want to learn more about this program and the planetary health strategy, again, there's another link on the bottom of this slide. To level set and make sure we're all on the same page, what is low carbon resilience? Low carbon resilience, at least from our perspective and how we're talking about it today, at the facility level is the integration of decarbonization, reducing our emissions and air pollution in parallel with climate resilience planning, minimizing our future climate risks to ensure business continuity. From a health lens, we want to slow down the pace of climate change to reduce future health impacts by minimizing that air pollution. And we want to prepare our facilities for current and future climate hazards to ensure continuity in seasonal and extreme events. The effects of climate change are happening now, and having this low carbon resilience framework, I feel is essential for how we develop our critical public infrastructure. We need to normalize climate-ready infrastructure planning in both new and existing projects. I've been reflecting on this quote by Canadian philosopher Marshall McLuhan. As we've been navigating these processes, and it's really connected with me, we look at the present through a rearview mirror. We march backwards into the future. Traditional cooling system designs are based on static historical data. In the era of climate change, using past data no longer works. A design shift is required. A change of how we think is required. With some health facilities requiring up to 40% more cooling capacity by 2050, ensuring thermal comfort for our patients and staff, especially our vulnerable populations, require a forward-facing approach. This quote suggests that our understanding of the present and our approach to the future are heavily influenced by our past experiences, and we often cling to what's familiar. While it's important to learn from the past, it's also crucial to collectively look forward. We have a different path ahead, and with an open mind and willingness to innovate and let go of some traditional past planning norms. So as we develop our low carbon resilient strategies, which we're just going to talk about one part today, the cooling infrastructure plan, but it's interconnected to many other aspects. And I just want to highlight this is an ongoing planning effort. We're still planning to plan in many cases, but we're calling, and if something's very good, we're just continually moving forward. So right now, as we look at this, applying a system thinking framework is really inherent into low carbon resilience planning, improving outcomes, improving organizational alignment, and opening up a whole bunch of cost and resource efficiencies as well. So there's so many benefits to this lens. And we'll dig into this one at a varied level, and it should set up and help you understand the following presentation by Ryan as well. At the start here, collectively, we wanted to develop some design criteria, looking forward for 2050. Where are we now? Where are we heading? We need to really kind of bring that together as a group so we could align everything to our future goals. So part of that framework was really a structured approach, bringing everyone together, everyone in facilities, kind of creating our own community and our own culture around this rapidly advancing and evolving infrastructure investments around cooling systems. And the strategy itself as well was intended to bridge the gap between strategic goals, longer term, and operational tasks that impact the day-to-day activities. And this wasn't framed as a climate action initiative. Rather, we just want to normalize the climate lens in all infrastructure planning. So this was the cooling infrastructure plan, cooling infrastructure strategy. The high-level goals. So first off, just making sure we have all the infrastructure, we know what we need in the future, and all enabling projects and investments. We want to just like map that out long-term. Part of that was really getting a clear baseline. Where are we at now? Where are the deficiencies? Where are their challenges? Where are there opportunities at the same time? And through this, identify ways to decarbonize and improve energy efficiency along the way. Some of the drivers for our work here, this one's probably the most familiar with everyone. We know that we feel it. We know cooling impacts up. It certainly impacts patients. Thermal comfort and heat is a determinant of health, and we see that does impact patient stays, the ability to recover. And so there's a plethora of knowledge and research behind this. Other pieces that don't all come to mind immediately, but we're seeing and recognizing the health system right now. Thermal temperatures above the range of medical equipment can provide some misleading readings. It might actually disrupt some of the critical clinical processes themselves. Infection control has a component here by able to dehumidify through cooling, pulling out that moisture, minimizing the spread of airborne pathogens, thinking about a cooling and ventilation system. There's a connection there we need to address. Emergency preparedness. As we move patients around, as we understand where there's structure and robust cooling systems in place, we need to make sure that is shared out and understood from our clinical as well as any of our emergency management partners who may be moving patients around, which we have been seeing this last couple summers, and I expect will be a regular occurrence. So building this knowledge and understanding what would be helpful for this group, as well as what information would be helpful for us as well. And then the operational disruption. So inefficient cooling can lead to equipment failures, service interruptions, and unsafe work conditions at times. And it can be an increase on maintenance resources and costs. So we've pulled this high-level approach into just five key steps. Janani is going to go through these in much more detail, but at a high level, I just wanted to lay them all out here. So baseline, where are we at now? How are we doing? Where are the hot areas? Is the cooling actually getting to where it needs to go? Step 2 is looking at this climate-ready cooling analysis. Going forward, using climate projections, what do we need? And where are there gaps in the system and where are there opportunities that we need to consider? And also kind of fleshing out some of those early enabling infrastructure needs. We're thinking about electrical distribution, cooling equipment, quite significant electrical demand and capacity draws in your electrical system on the campus, but also keeping in mind, many projects are happening outside of this lens. So just keeping a track of the electrical needs across the campus, just to make sure this is all lined up. And I'll have an example later on that pulls on this. Oh, sorry, one more section here. Then we'll look at the decarbonization and energy management pieces. So as we go through this, where can we recover heat to reduce gas consumption, and where can we just make the system more efficient and I'm going to say redundant as well. And lastly, the outcome of this is a collective prioritized, it's basically a project plan, but it's a list of prioritized work that needs to happen to take us to 2050 and beyond. And now I will pass it over to Janani to dig into these steps a little bit further.
Awesome. Thanks, Kori. So as Kori mentioned, I'll be walking through the whole cooling infrastructure planning process in more detail. And to start off, the first thing that we did was the baseline establishment. So even before we started with the baseline establishment, instead of addressing each facility individually, we grouped them strategically. So for example, we did have a cooling infrastructure plan just looking at the Vancouver General Hospital campus because of its large size. But for Richmond, we grouped the acute care and the long-term care facilities together by the community of care. And in our next iteration, we're looking just at the Sea to Sky corridor and the facilities within the Sea to Sky corridor. This is because it's important to assess and prioritize the upgrades at the right scale, and that helps us to, to take informed decision on these facilities. So after grouping, our first step was to establish the baseline. And for this, we mapped out the existing system through thorough site walkthroughs with FMO and leveraged existing data sources that's like asset registers, maintenance reports, risk registers, and that enabled us to establish the system condition at the base level. We also gathered clinical feedback, and that was an important step we took, especially from clinical risk and patient safety departments, because they were able to point out thermal comfort issues as they are the first users of these spaces. Another key part of the process was assessing the system capacity versus peak demand. And to do this, we installed chill water flow meters on the near the pumps to track the performance during peak summer condition and identify any stress within the chill water system. We also compared the actual airflow at the HUs with CSA standards and nameplate readings to ensure that the air system was operating as designed and if there were any discrepancies within the air system. And for the buildings that had BMS, we reviewed the trend data and evaluated the system performance over the last 5 years. Next slide, please. So after doing the baseline establishment, our next part of the assessment was to ensure that the cooling system is future-proof. I do want to bring off the attention to this graph here, and this is a graph of the current and future cooling demand for Vancouver Acute. And as you can see, the peak cooling load is around 3,500 tons for now, but by 2050, this is expected to rise by at least 40%, and we're at the 4,300 tons mark. But looking at 2080, this number is going to be more than double. And this whole thing is due to the rising ambient enthalpy, which means like as the temperature gets hotter and more humid, it not only increases the cooling demand, but also reduces the overall cooling system's efficiency. And this is very important why we are planning for future climate conditions. So designing our cooling equipment for 2050's climate demand and our distribution system for 2080 climate conditions was our priority. And as a part of this exercise, we also modeled the total cooling enthalpy for 2024 and compared it with the data sources that's available. There are multiple data sources available right now. And so we, compared this with 2050 climate data sources and selected the one that was most closely aligning with our climate projection. We also explored backup solutions such as external cooling connections for emergency scenarios. And all of this was captured as a design condition for our cooling infrastructure plan. Next slide, please. The next task we did was to look at the electrical distribution assessment. As everybody knows, like as cooling demand increases, the electrical load required to power the chiller, the HU, the cooling tower, the surplus electrical load required. And without strong electrical distribution system, we risk overloading our electrical circuits and causing system failures. So a key part of assessing the electrical distribution was tracking the load flow because it helps us understand how much power is utilized, especially during the peak season. So the image here is about data logger we installed in the electrical panel. So we can track real-time power usage during peak cooling demand, and that can help pinpoint the stress areas. We also performed condition assessment to identify the aging infrastructure. And by this whole exercise of electrical distribution assessment, our intent was to make sure we have available electrical capacity, or if not, understand what is the spare available and plan for future upgrades to ensure that we have the system can support future cooling expansions. Next slide, please. So after completing all the initial assessments, we identified a list of cooling strategies that fits into all of these buckets here. And of course, the primary focus was on the cooling capacity. So many of our systems lack the capacity to meet the future demand. So through our cooling load calculations, we were able to pinpoint the capacity shortfall and identified the chiller and the cooling tower upgrades for the coming years. And in addition to cooling capacity, we also need to address the distribution system because even if the chillers are adequately sized, we have to ensure that the cooling is delivered efficiently. So the air handling unit, the pipes and the pumps also need upgrades. So those were pointed out within the strategies itself. And another key aspect is heat recovery. So cooling systems generate a lot of excess heat. Most of it is usually wasted. And so repurposing this heat for space conditioning, preheating, or domestic hot water, we can improve efficiency drastically. And so the plan also points and talks about heat recovery opportunities. Controls optimization is also critical because it enhances the sequencing and it can fine-tune operations and it ensures like there's not much wasted cooling and improves overall the performance. So that was also looked at, and also demand side opportunities and load shifting because that helps to prevent systems from running at full power. And so the final plan brings in all these strategies together. Or if you can move to the next slide. And we have a comprehensive roadmap of phased upgrades. So in the end, we have a cooling infrastructure plan that serves as a roadmap with short, mid, and long-term strategies. And the plan prioritizes using a funnel framework. So it assesses the operational risk, climate resilience gaps, decarbonization opportunities, all of this associated with each measure, and it ranks the measures. And so this plan now has become a decision-making tool for our facilities team because it helps them plan for immediate and long-term upgrades. And beyond everything, beyond all the technical aspects this plan offers, the most important outcome of the plan was to enable the collaboration across different teams. So as we formed the cooling working group, we have a working group now that just looks at these cooling upgrades and discusses cooling needs and ensures that it is all aligned with the different stakeholders. And this plan is more sort of a living document that's reviewed and periodically updated. And so it has, as Kori mentioned, it has kind of fostered a culture shift and given us a system thinking approach, looking at innovative solutions from all the experts in the table and bringing them to enhance the cooling strategies forward. This is, Kori, if you can move to the next slide. So this is a snapshot of a summary sheet that this is from one of our cooling infrastructure plans, and it is a working document that our working group now uses for ongoing review and decision making. And if you can see here, each row here represents a cooling upgrade, which is prioritized by the ranking. And the first example here is the absorption chiller replacement project. And here there's a description column that talks about, replacing that existing chiller with a 2-chiller system. The next is a purpose column that defines the goal of each measure. So it increases the capacity or reduces the greenhouse gas emissions, or it improves efficiency. That's described here. And the next is a priority column, which kind of assigns priority as a high, medium, or low based on its impact and urgency. And the next is a consultant project type column. So it describes or categorizes if the project is a capital project or a maintenance or just a study to inform future decisions. The next, we have cost range to help align with the budgets. And the last is the estimated year. So provides a timeline for the whole project completion. And this is a sheet that is updated regularly in our working group sessions, and we track the progress and discuss completed measures and refine the approach for the next phases to follow. I'll pass it over to Kori to walk through an example of how these steps are actually implemented in reality.
Thank you, Janani. We thought it'd be helpful just to map one out and just kind of show how it happened, and with the caveat of understanding best plans laid out. A linear process is rarely actually the case, but what you can see here, we already had a chillers being designed. It was a big unit. It took a lot of time to already get there, which really triggered, okay, how are we going forward? Like there's a lot of steps in play. How do we map this out? Which really helped us kind of move forward with the cooling strategy itself. Some of the recommendations kind of in that prioritized project list that Janani highlighted, an upgraded chiller replacement, a very old steam-driven chiller we need to replace, and that was set up. We need to upgrade and renew some of our heat rejection equipment, our cooling towers. There's an opportunity to look at, okay, as we could look forward, is there other technologies that we should be looking at for heat rejection? An adiabatic cooling tower has a water element to that we wanted to consider, as well as a Legionella reduction from not having open water flows in our system. There's an opportunity to look at a way to improve the operation of none of our chillers, a load strategy, and then also another overhaul for the chillers and sensor calibration and another project on the road. So this is just a line. This is like a project prioritization. And thankfully, and it's something I really appreciated through this project, is we were able to pull out and flesh out some key environmental co-benefits. One of the projects here in the front, there's a 3% emission reduction. All these are reducing climate risk on some level. I would even say beyond just reducing climate risk, often we're building additional capacity for servicing needs for maintenance through this process as well. This study was going to look at, some water reduction, some chemical reduction opportunities. This project here, it's meant to flesh out some other electrical demand opportunities, and then another big second phase of that heat recovery project down the road. Having this really clear has been helpful, and also helped from funding aspects, from framing the project for getting funding for any of this work to go forward, and just creating a clear understanding of all the co-benefits of this work. Once we laid it out, we started moving, and very early on this, we had a failure of that chiller we were planning to replace. So there's a very, very advanced and progressive procurement strategy to get that in place and move it forward. That got in place. It was installed. Amazing. As soon as it was installed, we had it was just a minor repair. It was going to be 2 weeks to get apart. Okay, let's do that. It's kind of getting a bit challenging. Then we had a cooling tower fair at the same time. So this series, like, again, just like so thankful that we had already come together, had some collective decision making, and there was some support networks in place, thinking about that cultural shift and that connection. We're building some trust, again, certain key players in the system. And this here, and the way that our maintenance and operation team adapted, just the amount of respect and knowledge that this team has, I was very grateful, and the organization certainly knew how much they were doing for us at this point. But that plan and some of these events shifted some of our priorities. Really, we had to develop a load shedding strategy already when this happens, so we could push back one of the studies and really, okay, let's start looking at our cooling towers. Let's bump some of that work forward. So being nimble, being able to evolve over time, I think is quite helpful. Later on, we had some electrical capacity constraints show up, both from our utility provider and our own distribution system. And knowing that cooling projects have a lot of electricity, but so do diagnostic imaging equipment, so do our new electrical food survey model. So we had to pull back and understand what that means for organization. And part of that meant pushing back one of our large heat recovery chiller projects with an emission reduction, just to ensure we're aligning with organizational needs. And then through this working group, more discussion was happening around Legionella and some other redundancy risks that we were reflecting on, especially on that service aspect. So we expanded the scope of some of the studies that we need to look at. The cooling technology and redundancy analysis was now in play. And also through this network and through some understanding and consultant support as well, we realized that there's actually a VFD, a component that allows us to modulate a chiller to make it much more efficient and evolve in our system, which wasn't the case prior. So again, we started like shifting and changing and having all this collective knowledge come in was really helping us move forward. So we're pretty much at the end here, but I really wanted to highlight that, like going through that, having challenges, getting a plan in place, knowing the plan's not going to work exactly as we planned, but creating that community and that ebb and flow and that trust within certain key players within our facilities group and expanding to the clinical, has really been a wonderful outcome, and that culture change and that shift and that group mentality of we can go fast alone or far together has certainly been, I think, the best outcome from this process. So we're at the end here for our presentation, but for me, this is really the big point. Developing the strategy is really helpful, but creating a community of practice to move this forward collectively has been a significant benefit for our group. So with that, thank you very much for your time, and I'll pass it back to Aubrey, I believe.
Oops. Yeah, thank you, Kori and Janani. So next, gonna hand things off to Kori. Sorry. I'm gonna hand things off to Ryan Galloway. Ryan is a technical lead on major capital and new construction projects for Island Health. He has over 10 years of experience in a wide range of low carbon and climate resilient design strategies, which accumulated towards the creation of Island Health's low carbon resilience roadmap. All right, take it away, Ryan.
Thanks, Aubrey. And I am quite fine if we want to just let Kori take it away too. That would work for me. Great job, guys, on your presentation. Just give me 1 second here. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay. Just going to go to presentation mode. Can either Kori or Jenny confirm that you can see my slides? Okay, I see a nod and a thumbs up, so I think we're good to go. So Island Health is one of the 5 regional health authorities in BC. This is kind of just a really brief overview, some of the highlights of our organization. We serve a population fairly similar in size to Vancouver Coastal Health, a little bit smaller and different region. Across BC, we are, as we had said, we're broken down into 5 different regional health authorities. And really, the purpose that I put this on here, I wanted to kind of highlight is we have a little bit of a unique situation in that we're independent health authorities, but we work together and we really collaborate well, kind of as a group. I think especially in the area of energy and environmental sustainability. So a lot of what we're working on individually gets shared kind of to the broader group, and that collaborative spirit kind of gets brought forward into other organizations. And so I wanted to mention this because part of the inspiration behind our low carbon resilience roadmap was working with Vancouver Coastal Health through the work that they're doing. So we've just taken some of that mentality, some of what you had just seen in the past presentation, and kind of took our own different approach and kind of modified it to what our organizational needs were to develop a low carbon resilience roadmap. So just a little bit about our team. This is our energy, environment, and climate change team at Island Health. We have a fantastic group of individuals here, and we've actually grown a little bit since this photo being taken, but really strong group. And this effort would not be possible without having a really strong team to be able to put this together, because we really, this initiative, as I had mentioned, like different spins and different ways to go forward with planning exercise like this, we were really focused on developing this internally. So we leaned a lot less on consulting support than I think we would have otherwise, because we have a lot of really strong capacity on the team. And so that just ended up shifting kind of, I think, the focus. But I just wanted to emphasize that it would not be possible without that group of individuals. And then as well, I wanted to acknowledge the Lekwungen speaking people of the Songhees and Esquimalt nations, the Coast Salish nations, whose traditional lands we are thankful to enjoy and live on. I'm calling in from Victoria, so I'm very thankful to be able to work and reside in this greater area. And we recognize the importance of the spiritual and emotional connection the First Nations people have to the land. And that we understand that the ecosystems within these lands are being impacted to climate change, and our team is committed to helping reduce and minimize this impact. And so Kori and Janani had mentioned some of the drivers and the alignments on the federal and the provincial level, pointing towards the need for this effort. This summary comes within the provincial Clean BC kind of strategy, which for us puts on this requirement to reduce our emissions by 50% for 2030 and 80% for 2050. And as well aligns several initiatives with preparing for future climate. And for us, the one that really highlighted out was developing this comprehensive plan to transform our infrastructure to a low carbon and climate resilient standard. So that to us was something that we really kind of like took forward as a big inspiration for wanting to put forward this effort and develop our own roadmap. So the vision for us was to bring together all key collaborators as part of Island Health to formulate a shared strategy towards a low carbon and climate resilient future. So as we're all very familiar, it's great to have a vision, but to prepare for a reality. And I think in having that vision to bring everyone together and formulate a concrete plan of how we're going to transform our infrastructure for the next 25 years, you have to have that reality check, and that it's going to be a lot easy to say, difficult to bring together all those parties and formulate a shared plan. And I think the way that we really kind of adapted to be able to do this was to be nimble, to be flexible, and to allow the plan to be kind of a living document where it can change dependent on the need or dependent on the direction for a given facility. And I think of the hurdles and challenges within the kind of lower visual, the biggest was just the constant kind of change of infrastructure needs or prioritization of funding or overall infrastructure plan within kind of our greater capital. So that was really the challenge to work within. And I'll hopefully unpack a little bit about that as we go forward. So I kind of mentioned a lot of the, I think, the overall benefits in the past slides, or sorry, in the past presentation. But for us, this was our highlighted kind of core benefits. It adapts our pipelines and projects to align with organizational priorities. We provide key recommendations for future infrastructure renewal, high-level master plans, energy studies, etc. A lot of this initiative was supported by FortisBC and BC Hydro, our two utility partners. They paid for the lion's share of the kind of external costs. And so through that, there's been a heavy level of engagement and involvement, which we're hoping kind of puts us into a better state for future infrastructure funding. And then the biggest benefit is having this medium for solutions to be developed in collaboration and in advance of infrastructure. So Kori walked through a really great example there of Vancouver General Hospital, and the kind of constant changing of different systems failures. And it was really great that I think the conversations were happening in advance for that scenario. And that for us is really what we want to be able to do in this effort is we're having the conversations before equipment fails and before it's too late to explore maybe a more intricate system solution as part of that process. So kind of along the journey, really the start point was understanding what is going to serve our FM, our facilities maintenance and operations team. So at a FM conference where we had all of our leadership at the table, we surveyed to understand really where are the pinch points within our system. And it was overwhelmingly within the increased heat leading to overheating. And I think that really comes from being in a very mild climate zone. Historically, we have not required a significant amount of cooling infrastructure. So we have a lot of buildings and spaces that are either undersized for cooling or don't have cooling at all. And so it was in the range of 70% of individuals surveyed had this as their highest ranking risk. And so that formed part of our kind of prioritization around just focusing on how we can get additional cooling capacity. And then as well as part of that survey, we wanted to understand what was going to be the core deliverable, what was going to be the biggest, most important thing for our FM team to get out of this exercise. And that is really the prioritized capital plan for infrastructure replacement. And so knowing exactly what we need to do and having a phase plan for adapting for future climate, as well as responding to our goals to reduce carbon emissions, was really the core deliverable. We also had done a survey through our climate change and planetary health strategy. We surveyed over 1,000 island health employees. And this was a bit of a litmus test just to understand and kind of gain that highlight of the importance of the work that we're doing, and to make sure that we're going forward on important investments within doing this effort. And so it was overwhelmingly positive and in favor of the work that we were doing, which for us really helped, I think, in terms of that leadership, our leadership really buying into and kind of getting behind the work that we're doing. So to start off our road mapping efforts, we really wanted to focus on our biggest loads. So really our top 10 sites, our biggest 10 sites were about 80% of our emission portfolio. And so that's broken down here in this graphic. The further 10% was broken into our kind of long-term care facilities. So almost simpler designed buildings, but kind of we broke that into a chunk and did a separate assessment of that. And then the remaining kind of 10% was comprised of small buildings, paper, and fleet, which for the purpose of this exercise, we decided was out of scope and we would not target in terms of creating a emission reduction plan. Just we had other individuals and other exercises that were going to be kind of prioritizing and working through that. So this is one of the outputs for our Nanaimo Regional General Hospital. This is a prioritized capital plan, which has it broken down into, in this example, 13 phases. Within each of those phases, we have an estimation of what we think the emission reduction potential will be, and then the cumulative reduction. And so not all of these projects are necessarily, especially as we go forward onto like the phases 13, 12, and those are not necessarily going to be projects that are going to remain the same or even potentially get implemented. But we wanted to at least have concepts that could get us to the 80% emission reduction plan. And those ones are very likely to change. The ones that are on phase 1 through 5 are either already in process in implementation or through some phase of detailed design. And we have a lot more certainty around those projects going ahead. And I'll just show one example. This is phase 3 for that particular roadmap, and just kind of shows a snapshot of the kind of information that we have within each of these sub phases. Just a very like high level scope, kind of estimation of the emission reduction potential and kind of some ranges of costs. And the intent is to not get too far into the evaluation through this exercise of each of the individual specific measures, but to have everything comprised together into a whole plan. So more of a 10,000 foot version of kind of what we intend to envision. And then we go into each of these different phases as they come up on our capital cycle. And so this just same chart just shown in a different way for a timeline, working through the various different years of when we anticipate to be complete each of these different initiatives. And so that then all summarizes together in terms of investment pre-2030 and post-2030, just for those two different goalposts, and then where those emission reductions would be. The key caveat for 2050 would be dependent on electrical capacity, because through our estimations, we've shown that we would max out the electrical capacity for the hospital. And that isn't necessarily something that we would want to be putting forward, given the other electrical needs like CT scanners and things that are going to be coming forward into the future. So that then brings about this conversation around, and I think that's been similar to Kori. One of the biggest benefits of this exercise is that collaboration and that recognition and identification that we need to start having a lot more conversations around how we're planning electrical for this given campus and what we want to allocate for decarbonization. And kind of that long range planning, I think, has really been improved through going through an effort like this. On the climate resiliency side, just some highlights. Our capital plan is going to be increasing the actual tonnage of the mechanical capacity by 33% for Nanaimo. We're going to be addressing, and a lion's share of the cost is on the distribution upgrades to be able to get that cooling to the respective spaces. There'll be water efficiency improvements and as well electrical distribution improvements, just with putting a little bit of cooling capacity onto backup power systems so that in the event of an outage in the summertime, we're not totally unable to provide some level of cooling to critical spaces. So, yeah, I'll share, as I had mentioned, we took different approaches for different sites, and it was often dependent on different capacities or different interests within those respective groups. We had 10 different really working groups, and so we outputted different pieces of information for each. This is Royal Jubilee Hospital, our biggest campus. And for that, we similarly put together a phase plan. And this is a different output of that phase plan because there are major, significant gas loads within that campus broken down into 5 different buildings. And so this is kind of a stacked diagram that shows those big loads. And then each of those respective phases on the, you can see my cursor here, this is the blue line, which shows kind of our overall journey towards our emission reduction goal. And so at the current moment, we're about 19% emission reduction reduced from our 2010 baseline. And then we have a plan to go up to 82%. So for Royal Jubilee Hospital, we did a few other different initiatives. We're working with IES on developing a digital twin. That'll give us the ability to, within each of those respective phases, get a higher level of certainty about the overall design and as well the data that we're getting out of that. And so for us, the roadmap is like a macro level initiative, and then we have a whole bunch of sub initiatives or kind of more in-depth initiatives that will go and refine the data. And then we'll take that lessons learned and we'll apply it to the other projects and kind of overall still keep an organizational plan for how to decarbonize, but to kind of find a way to develop a concrete plan for our overall organization without going into the weeds of every specific site and every specific project to be able to come up with that plan. And so another example of a sub-initiative for Royal Jubilee Hospital, this is on the electrical distribution side. This is a single line diagram. Apologies, it's a little bit blurry, but it shows a few of our different sites with vital, conditional, and delayed vital, and just a mission or a pie graph there with the Christmas colors of red and green to show approximately where we're at within each of those systems. So that as we're looking at electrification, it's not just can the site handle that capacity, it's can each of those subcomponents handle that capacity, and what else is planned for each of those buildings, as we don't want to be constraining a particular location if we have future growth in that area. So this has, I think, been one of the more helpful examples of how we can kind of get co-benefits through doing this exercise, as the electrical distribution piece is carrying forward right now on the request to add a couple new CT scanners. So there's a lot of value in, I think, doing this effort beyond just the climate resiliency. I'll go over this one quick. This is an example of maybe an easy win for us in some ways in terms of infrastructure planning. We have an older facility that was about 4% of our overall emissions, and that's getting replaced by a brand new fully electric hospital that's also gone through and is planned to be Canada's first acute hospital to achieve the Zero Carbon Building Program certification. And so that's a program that's encouraging a lot of embodied carbon efforts, or through construction efforts of a new facility to look at things like low carbon concrete or using wood as opposed to steel where possible. So really within our overall efforts, we have a strong emphasis on any of our new builds to make them as low carbon as possible, which slowly helps us as we're transitioning and replacing infrastructure. So I kind of gave a couple examples of some of our facilities that are in the larger side or a new construction where we're replacing. West Coast General is a medium-sized facility for us. It's about 3% of our overall emissions. And this was actually the start point for the roadmap for us. And this is a facility right now that we're already achieving about 80% emission reduction. So we're already at our 2050 goal today. And that's come from really a combination of like smart capital upgrades. So we had a pre-existing heat recovery chiller system. It was not functioning. We made some capital upgrades to that by expanding the heat rejection capacity. We've put in some control valves, and we've done some optimization through our in-house BAS program, which is building automation specialist, to really fix the issues of the system while expanding it to also have better cooling rejection capacity. And so this collaboration lasted a couple of years, involved multiple parties, and really outputted an incredibly positive transference for a facility that was not functioning, had many issues, and we were planning to invest millions of dollars of capital to try to help alleviate them. But we were able to shift those projects in through this effort to output some really quick wins for the facility. So yeah, that's, and then I had mentioned we had kind of 10% of our buildings in long-term care. And so we worked with a technology vendor called Audette. They have automated decarbonization roadmap software that we got to trial out with them, and really kind of got to explore the potential of AI within the energy management space for kind of simple building systems. And so that was a really interesting effort and really great opportunity to kind of understand what the capital investments would be. And so this is an output of 10 buildings to show the investment required over a 50-year, or sorry, up to 2050 timeline. So with all of those efforts, we've combined everything together into an optional analysis to understand, because one thing that was clear out of this is that we don't have enough money. We don't have enough ability to invest in our infrastructure to get to our goals. So we wanted to look at really the three options being, do we rely on renewable natural gas within BC? We have the ability to purchase gas often produced from things like biomethane, to reduce our gas use and just use standard fossil fuel consuming equipment. So we have three different options here to use different ranges of RNG dependent on how much capital we would have available. And so that comes again back to that like flexibility of the roadmap, and that we know exactly what we want to do and how to get there, but we have to be nimble and flexible dependent on the capital that we have available. Another output of this in knowing our capital plan is we can overlay that and show in terms of technology how we're getting there. And I think this has been really helpful for us in engaging with our leadership so that they understand really where the investment is needed. You can see the two biggest here are HVAC / heat recovery, and the other being control system upgrades and optimization. And the control system upgrades and optimization requires significant human resources. And so we've been successful in onboarding more individuals onto our team. And right now, I think we have 3 building automation specialists that are constantly working on improving our systems as they are, or working through upgrades of control systems as they come available with that lens to decarbonize, find climate resiliency co-benefits, and other things. And so this has been very helpful in that discussion with our senior leadership and getting resources brought to our team. And so I'm getting to the end here of the presentation, and I think I just wanted to put out some pieces of, I guess, perspective, like from myself looking back on this effort, which has been a couple of years for us. Just if other organizations are in that similar boat of wanting to launch their own effort or initiative, just some thoughts. Like the first one, no one size fits all approach, be adaptive to the process required to get to the right strategies for each site. So I think that really comes through engagement and understanding the needs of the respective teams that you're working with, and adapt to be able to help serve those individuals. Start small and iterate the outcomes with engagement. And I think this is really critical for when you look at a whole organization approach to start somewhere and get going, because it can be a bit daunting to look at the total range of things that could be evaluated. Time is not your friend. That one, I think we all need to be having that thought daily, just around how much capacity do you actually have to achieve something like this, and then focus on accuracy versus precision. This is probably like the biggest takeaway for me from university days, was a professor putting up a slide very similar to those visuals on the side there, and just around you don't need to, and the overall concept of this is just you don't need to work so hard on trying to find or understand like finite data, as long as you can get it within that accurate range or kind of on target, and through engagement, like understanding the needs of the site and the operators, like get that accuracy as a priority over precision. I mean, if you can get both, that's great, but accuracy is ahead of precision. So this is just an acknowledgement slide for the various different groups. BC Hydro and Fortis BC at the top, because they've funded over 95% of the costs for our organization to do this effort. And then a lot of internal support through Island Health with our team, and then beyond teams. Just a ton of really solid engagement from our organization. Wouldn't be possible to develop something like this without it. So yeah, I think that's it for me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ryan. And thank you so much, Janani and Kori. We have a few minutes left to answer some questions. First, I'm just going to make mention to our participants that we do have a webinar feedback survey that I would appreciate that everybody took the time to fill out after we close up today. I'm going to put the link in the chat. Okay, and let's get into it here. So I see there's a couple questions, and some that have been semi-answered, it looks like. But maybe I'll start with the open ones. So Luke asked, beyond the climate shift, what kinds of clinical and or service delivery changes are you anticipating in the future? For example, more electric medical devices, new diagnostic equipment, space use changes, etc.
I can jump in. I'm sure there's other people on the call here who are probably more knowledgeable on this, but maybe a couple of things at a high level, what demographic we're serving right now. So there is a need right now for some diagnostic equipment expansions, but it's constant change. But I do think a lot of our digitization of our health system is increasing our electrical needs. But at the same time, there's a lot of thought going, future thinking of how we actually provide service, and preventative approaches, as well as, bringing the hospital to you rather than everyone coming to our facility, is certainly part of that. But I'll leave it to others to add to that. But that's kind of the first two things that come to mind for me.
Thanks, Kori. Anything else anyone wants to add before I move to the next question? Okay, great. So Caitlin was asked, is there any information or content you can share around how you built and pitched the business case for BAS specialists? That would be greatly appreciated. I think that's a question for Ryan.
Yes, I don't think I could do it in the minute that we have left, but if maybe we wanted to make that connection, I'd be happy to. We have a lot of content and information around that conversation. Part of it, I will say though, is that we had support from our utility partner. BC Hydro funded the position at the start, and we're working with them on funding the other couple positions that we've gained since then. But that was really critical for us to get our leadership on board, is that we didn't have to bear the full cost of that position. So yeah, I'm happy if that one's a takeaway, we could dive through. We had multiple years of engagement that were required. I think our leadership was working on it for over 5 years to try to get that position to come to life. So lots of background there to share.
Wonderful. Thanks, Ryan. Caitlin, I would be happy to connect you with Ryan if you have more questions or if you guys want to chat more on that subject. Okay, great. I will connect you guys via email. Okay, one more question from Annie here, and then we'll wrap up. Are you considering other energy sources, for example, solar, wind? Solar would be easy on your infrastructure, though of course we have great hydro.
Go ahead, Ryan.
We unmuted at the same time, so yeah. We actually had a separate sub-initiative with a UBC student to evaluate other sources of renewable in order to support the roadmap. Our roadmap was really focused around like mechanical retrofits that kind of are like really kind of giving us that co-benefit of cooling reduction as well. And because we have very clean grid, we can push a lot onto electrification, but we have been looking at things like biomass. Some of our new builds have solar built in. And so we are trying to incorporate as much renewable energy as we can. And we will continue to do that. As you mentioned, it's a living document. And as technology improves, we'll be changing our plans to adapt. So yeah, I'll stop, pass to Kori.
And we're similar too. Like we're kind of in that exploration phase. There's some work right now, but I think for us, if the solar and the battery combination, to add that resiliency and some other benefits is certainly being explored in a deep dive right now. And we're requesting, outside of this planning process, but all of our high-level master plans, we're looking at a campus in the future, that they would do some perk tests to see if there is geo opportunities, and just to move and kind of design to have our mechanical system outputs on the roof on the north side, just to ensure we can have some future capacity to enable solar integration. But yeah, that's an exciting kind of evolving piece right now. But there's certainly a need to start looking at on-site renewable resources for a whole bunch of reasons.
Awesome. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Kori, for answering those questions. I think we'll wrap up now. We all got some meetings to get to. So thank you for everyone who attended today. Thank you for to all of our presenters for the wonderful presentations. If anyone has additional questions, you can email me and I can always connect you with our panelists, autumn@greenhealthcare.ca. Just put it in the chat. Again, thank you all. Have a great rest of your day and week. Take care.